Csilla, welcome. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
All
Thanks for
good.
inviting me.
All good here as well. We're here for our very first community special because we have something very interesting as opposed to our rather usual interviews. Today, we're getting together with Csilla Brimer to comment on the announcement of the very first Monero DEX, and that is Haveno. So, how are you doing, Csilla? How did you feel? How did you feel about this announcement?
I'm super excited. It's the first decentralized exchange that will have Monero as a base cryptocurrency. So everybody in the community is freaking out.
I mean, it was about time, right? And it took the guy behind it, like this, the lead of the project, ErCiccione. He certainly took his time to get back to us with the answers to the questions. He didn't want to be directly interviewed here on the podcast. He requested that we did the interview just over text for privacy reasons, which, I mean, if we cannot get behind that, then we're not part of this community, right?
Right.
And so we sent him the questions. He was nice enough to reply to us, and we're here to comment on them. But first of all, Csilla, for those that might not know you, can you give us a little context on yourself and on the open economy initiative that you lead?
Sure. I've been in this space for the past 4 years. I started as a community organizer here in Colorado. Me and my business partner, Matt, we run the Open Economy Initiative, which is basically we run a bunch of educational events and we organize hackathons, and it's more like a community-focused blockchain community. And we also manage 2 communities up in the Bay Area. And for living, we work with blockchain companies in terms of blockchain consultancy, so tokenizing assets, helping them set up companies here in the United States, overseas. So yeah, and obviously I'm a big Monero fan. That's my.
You can see that's the angle. That's it. That's Chilla's own artwork on her favorite cryptocurrency.
Oh, artwork, okay.
So, Csilla, you're also very, very active on the Monero community, which is why I wanted to do this episode with you. And you're also well known not only by the community, but by let's call it like the more senior members of the community. So can you tell a bit on how you got into Monero and how you started doing your steps in this community?
Well, I was always a huge Monero fan. Ever since I started in crypto, but I was more like a silent member for a while, and all of our community events and meetups were in person before COVID, and so when COVID hit, I have this belief that there is no power in resisting what is. So we instantly switched online. We were like, okay, well, we can't have meetings, so that's that. And that's how I started, getting more involved with the community. And we do them a weekly clubhouse calls on Sunday, 11 a.m. MST every Sunday. So feel free to join. And then lately we started doing Justin's little late night Twitter spaces too. So yeah, there's lots of awesome events, and the DEF CON is coming up. So
really, I mean, one thing that I really like about following you on Twitter is that you just, like most people in this space don't dare do, you just speak your mind, and you're very into the privacy side of things, and you're of course very skeptic on what goes on, especially in the Bitcoin community, where there's sort of this denial of the lack of privacy that Bitcoin brings, of the excessive transparency. And so if you want, let's talk a bit about the, well, for everyone listening, go and follow Csilla on Twitter as Crypto Tweety. Is it Crypto Tweety? That is right?
Yeah, it's Crypto Tweety.
All right. And yeah, so if you want, let's talk a bit about what prompted us to be here, about Haveno. Haveno, basically, for those of you, I'm assuming most of you listening at this point came through the subreddit, through the Monero subreddit. So you already know. About 1 month ago, ErCiccione announced on Reddit that he and Woodser, two very important members of the community, two people that have more than 2,500 contributions to Monero and the open source community over the last year, which just demonstrate how involved they are and how well known they are. They announced that they were working on a DEX based on Monero, the very first one, something that, like we say, was long due, and announced that it would basically be a fork of Bisq, but using Monero as base. They requested the community to get involved, to be present by contributing with a logo, to get involved by working on the project, and even if they wanted to do so, to donate some funds to the project. And of course, there was a lot of enthusiasm. No one was expecting this announcement. So what were your first impressions, Csilla?
I think the perfect storm is brewing if you look around. Because right around the time that regulators are coming out and literally flooding the market with regulations, not just exchanges, but delistings, Monero from specific centralized exchanges, closing accounts randomly, banks closing accounts of people who even touch cryptocurrencies. I had one of my community members who told me that a couple of months ago, when XMR.to was still functioning, he sent funds from Cash App to XMR.to, and Cash App just closed his account. So we're seeing this really aggressive regulatory approach. And at the same time, we are seeing all these decentralized exchanges emerge, all these atomic swaps project, Farcaster, Comet, Torchain integration, cross-chain integrations. I mean, it's super exciting because by the time the users will realize what's going on, we will have these solutions readily available for people to use.
I mean, I'm pretty active, and Decor as a company is set up in Cyprus, and I'm very active in the community there. And Bank of Cyprus, well, the Islands Bank, main bank, has just decided to shut down everything related to cryptocurrency and every interaction that you have with cryptocurrency related businesses or websites. So you can just imagine how we all feel in the Telegram groups when someone is not able to cash out to pay for something that they need, or just to interact with a KYC account in their exchange, right? Not even going the raw route. So, like we say, this would be the very first Monero DEX, and it would mean it would be completely private and private by default, right? And that every transaction would happen over Monero. Having it via fork of Bisq, I have to admit that I didn't know Bisq before this, did you?
I knew about it, but I was cautious to use it because Bitcoin being a public ledger, the assumption is that approximately 50% of the Bitcoin comes from the darknet market that goes through Bisq, and you don't want to touch that, do you? So I was never really a big fan of
that is it. Something that comes up a lot. When we had Vic Sharma in the podcast, he was also talking about that. Well, that's the Bitcoin fungibility debate, right? The fact that your Bitcoins could have been used for basically anything, and you don't want to get caught on that trail. But I'm not too familiar with that, let's call it, train of thought. Have there been any case of people having their coins wrongfully traced back to them?
Well, I don't know. I just, the cases that I read about, but I imagine that if you were to send a coin that was involved in some kind of darknet market or some kind of illicit activity, or it's on a blacklisted address, and you try to send it to, say, Kraken or Coinbase or Gemini, they're just going to close your account. That's just my guess. I mean, you can try it. But yeah, it's at this point, not only that, but like I said, this friend of mine in Colorado, and I know they are not doing anything illicit. He just tried to purchase. He just tried to send Bitcoin from Cash App to XMR.to, and his Cash App account was closed immediately. So like that's like a super, in my mind, that's just an overreach, right? Like it's an assumption that you're going to do something wrong because you're going to buy XMR. Like how far are we going to take this?
And it does show you that some people, the right people from around, they're a bit scared about Monero, right? Like they don't want. In the end, each one of these is a publicity stunt of sorts for Monero, right? If every time a regulators show that they don't want it, it's another. It just ticks another box saying how necessary Monero is.
Well, it's like cash. It's the digital form of cash, and we have cash. So I don't see what the big fear around Monero is because we use cash.
We use cash, and in some
And it's
cases.
not scary.
I mean, you're gonna go to Venezuela, you're gonna come to Argentina. We use a lot of cash. We use big stacks of cash because of the inflation.
Oh,
And so, since I was looking at Bisq for the first time, right? It kind of strikes me with a local Bitcoins feeling, but somehow the user interface is a lot worse, which seemed hard to get the interface wrong or wronger than local Bitcoins. And I think that was one of the strong points of this announcement, right? Of the Haveno announcement, that they wanted to improve upon the structure. They just wanted to have the multi-signature idea and build upon it, but getting the interface up to speed with the times and with the requirements of building something that people would actually use.
Yeah, and I really like there was a mention that you don't even have to own Monero. You can just mine Monero to get started with the RandomX. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they're gonna create.
Are you mining? Are you mining yourself? I forgot to ask you before this, and now I'm curious.
I am not now. No, I do run a Monero node, but I don't mine.
All right. Well, so back to Haveno, as we were saying, the enthusiasm from the community was great. I commented on the post myself. I tried to get them a logo. I got too late to to the logo competition, but I tried. And they were soon granted 0.18 Bitcoins by Samourai wallet, just showing how the mindset in Monero is different, right? You take a couple of people that are completely anonymous, that people don't know the faces of, that have never even shown their voice here, because I offered them to just come on the podcast as just voice and not showing their faces. I offered them to blur their voices, and they didn't want it either. So distort, sorry, blurries for faces. Well, they wouldn't. And still, companies that are helping build this space further, they're supporting these projects and very much showing how needed they are.
Yeah. Samourai wallet, I have a lot of respect for them because they managed to stay true to the cypherpunk ethos, and they promote privacy very heavily. And also last week they came. Was it last week? He came on the weekly Monero Clubhouse call, and mentioned that they're looking into actually creating Bitcoin Monero atomic swaps with Samourai wallet. So I'm just super stoked that they're looking into this alternative as well.
And yeah, as a part of this, in the original announcement for Haveno, ErCiccione also mentioned that Wutzer was working on the atomic swaps for the DEX, which is great, right? Because we have everything that is the current need for the community in one place. So to follow-ups because I would really want people to know what goes on in the weekly Monero Clubhouse meetings, and also if you could describe atomic swaps for those that are not too familiar with them or why they're so important.
Yeah. So wow, what goes on?
Yeah, so here's the floor to you for 15 minutes, obviously.
I could go on for like 5 hours. So what goes on? Believe me.
I'm used to interviewing people. I'm used to being lazy.
Yeah. So for example, this Sunday we will have Thorchain. JP from Thorchain will join. So try to make it. He's going to talk about the Thorchain, the cross-chain integration. Then we will have Andres from Monero. And we will have Simon and also a gentleman. I'm not going to say his name because I may butcher it. But he wrote an article about the Lightning Network. And oftentimes on the Monero calls, we compare Lightning Network privacy versus Monero privacy. And I thought, okay, since he's an expert and he said he hasn't actually looked into the Monero since 2017, so interested to catch up, I thought, well, come on, join us Sunday, and then we can kind of brainstorm and see how those two compare. So we have experts from all different areas, and we're going to try to push for having a guest moving forward, so we can kind of create more valuable content for people. But yeah, it's been going on for hours every week. And what was the second question?
I'm sorry. Just to give people another reminder, how can they join this?
So, I mean, if they follow me on Twitter, I always share the link, Crypto Tweety. And if they go on Clubhouse, there's a Monero room, and that's usually where the calls are hosted. And if anyone needs an invite, then they can just reach out to us because we have lots of invites from Monero fam. So.
Perfect. And yeah, the other question was just your comments on atomic swaps, why they're important, why it's good that people are working on them.
Well, this is our biggest opportunity to detach from centralized exchanges and the control and the regulation from the centralized exchanges. I mean, without atomic swaps, I can quite easily foresee a scenario where they just not ban it, but they simply delist it from all the centralized exchanges. And although you cannot stop people from purchasing Monero, you can make it pretty difficult if you want to. It's already very difficult. And we're seeing it that even Gemini, like they added Dogecoin. Okay, they add a meme coin, but they don't add Monero. I mean, to me, it's just 2021. It's way worse than 2017. Put it that way, with the ICOs and stuff.
And you see when we're talking about meme coins and Dogecoin, everything. In the Monero community, we also had our own meme coin, right? The Monero, and even that one managed to do more. I was looking at a meme earlier today, and I thought it had some sense to it because even during the Monero Prime, the more private transactions happen thanks to that coin than they ever happened thanks to Zcash, just because the privacy by default setting is so important. Like you said, atomic swaps are just going to be the way in which most likely we'll be able to get around centralized exchanges. And I think once that's done, there's no, I mean, do you imagine any further way they can stop it?
No, it becomes unstoppable. In fact, Justin said it in one of the calls that he believes that centralized exchange is going to beg users to use it. Oh, Okay. And I actually agree with him 100%, because I think at the moment, I think what I foresee, and this may take a couple of years, right? Because when Haveno will come out, most likely it's going to look like the local Monero, or I mean, it's not going to be the easiest user interface, but over time, as these platforms are being developed and they become user friendly, and we are seeing the increase in parallel to that in the regulatory approach, I can definitely, if it's easy, I can definitely see users start, using decentralized exchanges, as opposed to, Gemini or Coinbase. Or
I'm sorry, how was this thought process about exchanges begging users to use Monero?
um, exchanges will beg users to use centralized exchanges in the future. Yeah, because right now, I mean, it's a pain. First of all, I don't know if you go the exchanges that you guys use in Argentina, but even with Cash App, sometimes it won't accept your driver's license, and you're like, oh gosh darn it, I'm just trying to create an account, and the whole KYC is a really painful process. Not to mention all the data breaches that we are seeing, and we are seeing that even the best of the best get hacked. Ledger had that big data breach, then Trezor had their data breach. I mean, it's everything that can be hacked will be hacked in the next couple of years. And that's another thing that's happening simultaneously, which is why I keep saying this is like the perfect storm, because all these things are happening parallel to each other. And, once users will feel the pain, right? Because we don't make decisions based on pleasure. We make decisions based on pain. So once your account is closed, once you're blacklisted, once you lose your ability to, purchase whatever you want, that's when you'll start looking into alternative ways to get around it.
And once you get the platform, in some senses, that's just the first domino in the line that just tips everything off to you not being able to access your bank account or to access anything. Most people probably joined or are watching this because they want to see the interview with ErCiccione from Haveno. So if you want, let's jump to the list of questions that we sent him and just comment a bit on them, because there's some pretty interesting thoughts in there from him. And the first one is a very basic one. How did you come up with the idea? We asked, and he replies, I started to contribute to Bisq because I really liked the idea of a decentralized governance system embedded in the exchange. But after some time, I found out it was more of an overcomplication, and it didn't work as well as I expected. In the meantime, he says, I was trying to push for better Monero support. When all the efforts to make that happen got wasted, I started to think about creating something similar to Bisq, but based on Monero instead. After a bit of searching, I finally found a group of people who shared my same idea that a Monero-based exchange is very needed, so we started to work on it. And here I'm just going to add something that I found on their FAQ that I thought it would be very interesting and that would complement this. And it says that part of the idea for Haveno is that it's going to be censorship resistance thanks to the absence of a server, right? Because it's P2P. You cannot ever censor it because it's also built on Tor, and because it's non-custodial, the user is going to have a total control of their wallet. And Haveno is based on Monero, allows traders to take advantage of the low transaction fees of Monero that we know are orders of magnitude lower than Ethereum or Bitcoin. It's more convenient to trade, especially for the lower amounts. And with these having much lower transaction fees, it also gets the benefit of the Monero dynamic block size, right? Which makes things more scalable and flexible than Bitcoin. So I guess up to this point, we both agree that this is a great idea, right? To build something that replaces the system that Bisq promotes, and they're sort of ruining it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the transaction fees, it's a great point because it costs less than 1 cent to transfer Monero. Uh, so that's going to be a lot cheaper. So there's a financial incentive as well for users on top of the privacy considerations.
There is, since we're speaking about about fees, there is a conspiracy theory going around, and I know you like conspiracy theories, that pretty much the volume and the price of Ethereum is being blown up by themselves, is being pumped by themselves, since there's just no way that there's such a demand for Ethereum with fees like that. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you hear anything about that?
I mean, right now, I can easily imagine that it is being used in DeFi, and a lot of people are using Ethereum in DeFi. I was really shocked if you go on the Explorer. I was really shocked to see the XMR usability. It's just off the chain. You're like, nobody's using XMR. Hello. Like, I'm not sure how, XMR gets usability. So a lot of it could just be, fake volume. We would never know.
We'd never known. And since ErCiccione adds here his thoughts about contributing to Bisq and trying to improve upon it when he felt like what they were doing was not adequate for the community, I would just like to add what Samourai Wallet said when they announced the grant that they gave Haveno, because they tend to agree on the lacks or on the shortcomings of Bisq. They say, and I'm going to read this again, a privacy-first, KYC-free on-off ramp is essential for privacy-seeking Bitcoin users. You might be asking yourself why we are supporting this project over Bisq. The operator of Bisq has crossed red lines by proclaiming Liquid will be used as the base layer. And Liquid is a custodial solution. We believe this is the first step towards KYC capture of the platform. And that's about it, right?
Samurai Warriors, KYC capture. I mean, it's absolutely true.
And yeah, as soon as you get to custodial solutions, and that's the main point for Haveno, once you get to custodial solutions, there you're on your way down to becoming a centralized exchange and therefore betraying your ideals, right? I don't know why Bisq is aiming to pursue these kind of things. My only guess is that they're probably gonna knock on their door, right?
Yeah, which is kind of a little bit concerning to me with Haveno as well. And that's why I don't mind that they did this text interview with us. I think it's much safer.
Yeah, like at the very least, please, if FBI, if you're watching this, we're not contributors. Like, we're just here to talk about it. And can you, since the next question was by yourself, it was one of your questions, do you want to read that one out?
Sure. How long will it take to create a user interface? And they said, well, it's hard to tell. Depends a lot by the amount of dev resources we manage to gather. So please, even if you have $5 worth of donation, send it to them. I would say minimum 6 months, but maybe earlier if a lot of people are willing to help. Right now, we are starting design on a small group of active developers. It's a very good start. Yeah, that's it. So if you are a developer and you're listening to this, or you can contribute with design, then feel free to reach out to them and support any way you can.
Particularly with labor, I think, right? Because I think this comes as an answer from another question, but most of the money they're trying to raise anyways is for covering the costs of labor, right? So anyone that wants to volunteer with work, they're effectively gonna lower the amount that's needed to fund the project. Then that money can go towards bounties, it can go towards just other very much necessary things. Okay, so let me move on to the next question then. What is or will be the main difference between Bisq and Haveno besides having Monero as a base currency? And how can the community support this project to get started? Here it was. Okay, so, and their answer is, we want to give a much nicer and smooth user experience. Haveno will be for the average user, not only power users. And more details here, as well as something I added from their FAQ as well, and links they sent. The community can support Haveno by actively working with us or providing funds. To provide funds, you can go to github.com/Haveno-DEX. So you can go there if you want to contribute with either. It's on GitHub, Haveno-DEX. And from the link they sent, we also get that they think because of Bitcoin's lack of fungibility and privacy properties, every transaction and address on the BTC blockchain is easily traceable. Anybody can check who a BTC user transacted with, to, and the amount of the transaction. This design flaw has allowed and empowered blockchain surveillance companies, which made Bitcoin's blockchain a surveillance paradise and a privacy nightmare. It's trivial to identify on the Bitcoin blockchain which transactions come from a Bisq exchange. This compromises the privacy of Bisq traders. The BSQ token is a huge privacy concern when used to pay transaction fees on Bisq. It makes possible to link a transaction with a specific Bisq user. And what we were saying, right? Even going one step further, if they start KYCing users, then everyone's just compromised from the start.
Yeah.
And we've seen this increase, or at least have seen this increase in my immediate circles, of how much present these blockchain explorers are getting and these surveillance solutions are getting. Are there, I don't know, anything you want to add in there?
Well, it's becoming a huge business. There's about 5 or 6 well-known, chain analysis type companies. And, the whole blockchain analytics is a new industry emerging alongside blockchain. So we're going to see more of this. So I'm going to pick the next one.
Go ahead, please.
You are a long-term members of Monero community and people have expressed their trust in you. What model do you plan to use to keep the DEX trustless and decentralized? Okay, this is always a big question. So they answered, Haveno will not be trustless. Arbitrators will hold one of the 3 keys. The other 2 are owned by the 2 traders. So to be able to confirm a transaction to one of the 2 parties in case of conflict. So a trader will have to trust the arbitrator, that the arbitrator doesn't collude with the other 2 traders to scam them. This is solved by having trusted members of the Monero community for the role.
I mean, and this is where we both agree that this might not be the best part of this whole thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is that the XMR USD will require an arbitrator, and part of me understands because it's an exchange. So if there's some issue, who's going to deal with that? So, but as long as I just fear that if it's just one arbitrator, and this arbitrator happens to live in the United States, for example, and since Haveno seems to be against, the whole entire regulatory initiative, right? I mean, I can see this person being approached.
Csilla, would you mind if we stop here for 1 minute? I just need to go get my charger. And we're back. We had to take a little recess in there. So we were just talking about the need for arbitrators in this system and how neither of us think it's that good of an idea that this doesn't have a trustless governance system. And I'm just worried that, like you say, that this might cause people to get unsolicited attention, that to cause at some point even collusion. And when I was preparing for this interview, I was also remembering another interview that I did last week. That one should go live before this one, a couple of days at least before. So it was with Federico Ast from Kleros. And Kleros is a trustless, decentralized governance system on the blockchain, arbitrage system rather. So what they do is that they process small claims, KYC claims, in social media claims, these small things that cannot be completely fixed by robots, but that need human eyes on top of them. And I think that integrating something like that wouldn't hurt a project like this that's otherwise very good, but that we all feel having a multi-signature with one trusted party that's elected by the system itself. I think in my eyes, it causes a lot of centralization, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the XMR trades are trustless, but it's just the XMR USD trade require an arbitrator.
Yeah, you're right.
So I guess if they can somehow separate those, so that even in the event that they will get approached by regulators, the XMR Bitcoin trade are in a trustless form.
And I mean, of course, that's the most important part of the exchange, right? Because you don't see people complaining that they don't have an avenue to do XMR to XMR trades. In the end of the day, what an exchange is needed as a ramp is exactly to access it with or access cash through it. So I would recommend people listening to take a look into what Kleros does, just to wrap your mind a bit around what would be possible to do in a decentralized manner. I'm not saying use this solution, because I know there are other solutions that offer the same thing around. I just know this one, and I think it's a good example of what can be done. And that's another use case for blockchain technology. That's another thing that can be fixed in a decentralized manner.
What does Bisq do at the moment?
What does Bisq do? I think I read somewhere that they inherited that 2 out of 3 signature thing from Bisq, but I got the impression that Bisq somehow discontinued it. I don't know what they discontinued it for. If you want to look it up, just so we can add this for people, and in the meantime, I'll read the next question and the next answer. So the next question and answer are: do you guys know each other? Well, I'll read 2 because there's not much to the next 2 ones. Do you guys know each other in real life? Where are you based? They say, we don't know anything of each other except our works, which are mostly public. Like I said, these are very prolific members of the community. These are people that have worked in a lot of projects and that have a very substantial record put out and therefore are respected. So, and this goes back to what we were saying before, we're not saying that we don't trust them. It's just that having a system that needs a trusted party can cause, in our eyes, some troubles. I'm sure that at some point there'll be a lot of discussion in the community about that. And the next question would be, what do you most need funds for? And they say, we need to pay a designer and for funding our bounty system. More info, again, at the GitHub link. Yeah, like we said before, the things that are most needed right now are designers, are people that can help.
You help them with that. I didn't know that's what they need. I can help them with design.
Are you in interface design?
Well, not interface, because you just need design. I don't know what they need design.
I mean, I assume that they mean the interface design.
Oh, no, I'm not a web designer, if that's what they mean.
Yeah, I guess the thing that they need most help for is because since they want to do a friendlier version of Bisq, they probably just need people to help them clean up the user experience, the user interface. In any case, people that want to help, including yourself, Csilla, now that you've raised your hand, you can get in touch with them through the GitHub link. We spell it out here, but it'll also be in the comment, not in the comment section, in the description box. Whether you're listening to this on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you can find this in the description box. And did you manage to find the Bisq thing?
Yes. So they only use that as the arbitrators, the last layer of a dispute resolution. So, and it doesn't happen too often when it comes to Bisq. Bisq does not hold any Bitcoin. All the Bitcoin used in the trading is held in a 2-of-2 multi-sig address controlled solely by the trading peers themselves. They don't hold national currency. The data is transferred over the peer-to-peer networks. I'm guessing all of the same things. So really, this arbitrator is, I think, and I hope I'm correct, it only comes into play if there's a dispute that has to be that needs resolution, and that's when the arbitrator has to look into it.
Right, and that's the Haveno approach as well. They are doing that 2 out of 3 in the hopes that if Csilla wants to send me some money, and there's no problem at all, we both release the escrow with our separate keys, and there's no need for anyone else to come into it. I'm also wondering here, what would the process for selecting community members to be arbitrators be? Because I mean, I'm assuming that there's going to be a reliance on evidence here. People could fabricate evidence. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong. I don't think in the beginning we should worry a lot about that, just because, as you said before, in the beginning, this will most likely be just used by people that want to support the project. And as the interface gets better, things will naturally grow.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if, further down the line, obviously, there's going to be because DAOs are becoming more and more popular, and maybe there will be other solutions, technical solutions for this.
Yeah, of course. And since you mentioned DAOs, and since the next questions, we can leave the following questions for after this, because I think this topic is something that we should touch on, and that's perhaps the most interesting innovation upon Bisq that Haveno does, and is the question of introducing a DAO. So as they say, we don't plan to introduce a DAO. We explain why we decided not to use Bisq's DAO in the FAQ, and here is what you can find in the FAQ. Bisq's DAO is an interesting and innovative governance mechanism, but currently seems to be an unnecessary overcomplication that takes a lot of resources to maintain. Bisq contributors earn BSQ tokens according to how much they contribute to Bisq and the roles they cover inside the project. More BSQ a person has earned, more their vote count when it comes to both for releasing rewards, protocol changes, etc. One of the problems is that there seems to be no expiring date for roles or maximum amount of roles that a contributor can cover. As a result, long-term Bisq contributors who already cover multiple roles will always gain more BSQ than a newcomer, and unless they decide on their own to leave some roles, there is no way for a new contributor to have as much voting power as a veteran Bisq contributor. The new contributor could make such large contributions that they would earn them a huge amount of BSQ. But even in the case the release of the BSQ is voted with the mechanisms we mentioned earlier, so earlier Bisq contributors with more voting power could vote against releasing rewards to the newcomer if they feel the power threatened. Furthermore, BSQ tokens can be bought. Acquired BSQ has less voting power than earned BSQ, but less doesn't mean none. A wealthy and malicious attacker could buy the amount of Bisq necessary to influence a vote. This is a major hole for a decentralized governance system. These are all the worst case scenarios, and there doesn't seem to be any proof that something along these lines has ever happened, but it doesn't mean that won't happen in the future. And this sort of also explains the thought processes behind not having a community token either. I don't know, what do you think, in your opinion, would this be better off with a DAO?
So in my experience, DAOs, I mean, they're right. DAOs at the moment are just unnecessary, burdensome complications. When, I've been to hackathon where they were planning to use a DAO and it ended up being an Excel spreadsheet. So,
but for those just in audio platforms, Chilla's making air quotes.
Yeah, but it's true. It's like it didn't work, and so they had to use an Excel spreadsheet. So in my mind, until DAOs get to a point where they have a structure and they work and they functional, I think they should focus on the main things, like creating the exchange, having a user interface, making sure it works, it does the primarily function. And then you can always overcomplicate things should you wish to.
Of course. And I think they're spot on in one thing that I think is gonna cause a lot of Black Mirror scenarios in our lives. The fact that DAOs seem to reward the powerful in the end of the day, right? If you're doing everything to proof of stake, you're only giving more power back to the powerful or to the richer, and I don't see much pushback from an argument on the other direction.
No, but can DAO still happen without having a DAO, like between the arbitrator and the two traders? Can that still happen?
I'm sorry, can what still happen?
So we said that we have an arbitrator and two traders who hold the keys.
Okay, yeah.
That can happen. Like anything can happen.
Exactly. Yes, so you're right that the DEX doesn't need a DAO, and it might seem like an overcomplication, and I like that they're thinking about these things, because if they're not necessary, I mean, there's no point in having them. The one thing that they could be needed for is to have a decentralized governance system, which is something that I think it is lacking here, right? Although in all justice and in all fairness, this is an open source project. Anyone could run their own version of it and change whatever they want. Like they said, if you don't like it, fork off. But you would think that this gives it a component of the centralization, right? Because in the end, it's the Haveno team that's appointing the arbitrators.
Correct. Well, let's assume that people who go as far as using a decentralized exchange are wise enough to never leave funds on these exchanges, and they have their private keys. And if you find anything, in my mind, if something happens, people will just stop using Haveno. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, to be honest. As long as people are able to exchange XMR to Bitcoin back and forth and it works, I wouldn't worry too much about that aspect. I mean, obviously, if issues arise, then people will either stop using it or they will fork.
All right, and since you're touching on that, another question that we ask them is, how will you govern the decision-making and the usage of funds? And they say, the project has a core team which manages finances and decides how to allocate them. Haveno is open source and community-driven, so development and community will always be interlaced. I mean, yeah, and that's part of what you say as well, because in the end, the community does recognize its leaders by itself, right?
Right. It's a natural process. I mean, we hate it, and it's taboo topic. Nobody wants to talk about it in the crypto space because we say, oh, centralization bad, decentralization good. So it's this thinking. But if you think about it, well, even Monero, it's an open source decentralized community. But if you start looking at the contributors, you're going to find much the same people contributing. So, I mean, uh, I always say, there's what, 2 million people working for the federal government. Is that decentralized, do you think? 2 million people?
Yeah.
So it's like the whole decentralization is a very blurry subject, because like, where does it start? When can you call something decentralized? And we obviously aim for maximum decentralization as much as possible. And right now it's a small project, so how many contributors we'll be having, the more the merrier.
And it's a bit, don't want to compare two things that are not too similar at all, but it's sort of like what happens in Ethereum, right? Like Ethereum is supposed to be this foundation where everyone's equal, but in the end, if Vitalik says something, it gets done some way or another, because it's just the person that has earned the founding authority. So you're right in that decentralization is one of those words that doesn't really mean anything. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not just authority, because if you think about it, these technologies don't build themselves. People build these technologies, and you have to have a certain level of knowledge. There's only so many people like Vitalik who can come up with I can't come up with ideas like Vitalik, you can. So there's only so many people who can be like substantial contributors in building these. And that's what happens, really. That's what plays out. But as long as we aim for decentralization, I think we're doing our best. That's practically and functionally possible.
I think it was Balaji. I cannot pronounce his last name, at least not by memory, but I think it was Balaji who was proposing that we had a measurable score for decentralization for these type of things, right? Because if we had like a mathematical formula that we can use to track decentralization, then it's easier to be able to place something in a scale, right? And use hard facts to calculate that. Let us go forward to the next question, Csilla, then.
Sure.
Yeah, if you want to take it.
Okay, so what's the vision for Haveno? Haveno. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Haveno?
I've always pronounced it the way you are pronouncing it. So sorry, guys, if we're butchering it, guys.
So the vision is to have a place where you can easily exchange privately and safely fiat and cryptocurrencies for Monero, because Monero is the base coin, right? And obviously it comes with the no KYC.
The no KYC, which is the base on which this becomes a solution to the problems that are originating through Bisq. So moving forward, we have these milestones that they're marking. I sort of like, you don't see this, but Csilla and I are looking at the question list, and I already made a mess by skipping questions to get to the DAO part, but back on track. What milestones should people look forward to? They say, besides the launch itself, I would say trustless atomic swaps between XMR and BTC and possibly other coins. That's interesting. They mentioned Bitcoin Cash in the Reddit conversation. In the Reddit thread, there was mention of Bitcoin Cash, I guess because of the low fees. But I don't know, do you know any other case for Bitcoin Cash?
I do not know. I don't have a problem of integrating, more major cryptocurrencies. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, if it's tied to XMR, the more the merrier in my mind, because it's all based on XMR. So it just gives more liquidity to XMR.
Exactly. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, I agree. So want to take the next one?
Yeah. So what's more important for you right now, contributors or donators? Definitely contributors. There's so much to do. Okay, so reach out to them. A few already started to help out, but we are about to introduce a bounty system to incentivize development further.
Okay, right, and that's what we've been saying all through this. Take if you think this is a worthwhile cause, get in touch at the very least. If you don't have too much time, if you don't have too much money to donate, I'm sure that any help would be necessary, even for marketing purposes down the line or for fundraising projects down the line. So next one would be, when accepting a grant by Samourai Wallet, they quoted that they would fund you rather than Bisq, given that Bisq was incurring into blind maximalism and was on its way to become KYC captured. How do you ensure that your project will steer away from custodial solutions? And they say, we're absolutely not interested in custodial solutions. We don't want to be forced to trust a third-party entity. I think implementing a custodial solution goes against the spirit of a permissionless and decentralized platform.
Amen.
Amen.
I agree with that. I think you skipped one though. What will the fee model be?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Take it if you want.
Okay, so what will the fee model be? Again, how do you ensure it remains decentralized? Well, it says we are still working on the trade protocol, but traders will probably pay a fee for each trade. And these fees will be used to reward maintainers, operators, and development. I love this idea. I was thinking about this. Like, why don't we just do that? Because you can easily.
Yes, so sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, you have to do these kind of things, right? Because if you want to stay somehow decentralized and you have the chance to earn from fees, the best thing that you can do is to just continue to fund growth through the fees, right?
Right. I was thinking about this, like, why are open source projects not introducing a fee, a usability fee? Because then they don't have to rely on the charity and the donations, and they can have someone on payroll constantly contributing.
And yeah, backtracking to the conversation that with Big Sharma from Kate Wallet that I was referencing before, he also said the same thing, that it's a hard thing to start earning when you're open source, because people just get the idea that everything should be free, and at the bottom of their hearts, like, people creating open source things want to make everything free. So this is like two potential users telling you, go and charge for your services. Don't be shy. If it's necessary and if you justify it, we understand.
Yeah, no margin, no mission.
Exactly. So I think one of the key takeaways here, Csilla, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is that people are connecting anonymously on the internet. They're getting projects kickstarted anonymously. They're getting funding anonymously. And it just fills me with hope to see that we're kickstarting an economy where you don't even have to show your name. You can be judged only on your ideas.
Yeah, it's the trustless systems are truly taking off, and I think it's just beautiful. And I mean, even from Monero, right, or like one of these exchanges, you can check the reviews and trust that is a trust that that's a trusted person to trade with, basically, just based on the reviews.
Exactly, just based on their past actions and how they've screwed up or not screwed up people. And yeah, man, like, I mean, the whole time I was chatting with ErCiccione over Twitter, he uses the same avatar all throughout the internet is this little flame. So every time I was talking to him, you're just assuming that I was talking to that little flame, you know. And I'm gonna be very disappointed if we ever discover that he's not that picture.
Yeah.
So would you like to add any thoughts to your impressions on the Haveno project? Anything that you'd like to ask people to do now that you have the opportunity to speak to our audience?
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone to go to the GitHub link and reach out, and whatever you skills you have or whatever you can contribute to, support these people, with the user interface or whatever you can help with, or donations potentially. But I truly love the idea of, integrating the fees. I think all the open source wallets and F-Droid apps should do that. And that way, there would be a revenue generation source to keep people on payroll, to keep developing, because we're never going to flood the market with freedom technologies if we don't do something.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to ask you, like, outside the Haveno discussion, and for people that are getting into this privacy world, for people that want to be more outspoken about this privacy world, how do you, and you're very tied to it, you're very much, your face is very much tied to it. We were talking about the pseudonymous activity there and the anonymity in the community, but you actually go out and you put your picture to it, you put your face, you put your name. So how do you deal with just the societal repercussions of being in the privacy community?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny when you have a faceless community and maybe 5 or 6 faces.
Yeah.
Everybody has the mic. But in the same time, I think it's very important that, regular people join this space, because as long as everybody's anonymous and, the only people who are either using darknet markets or doing some nefarious activities use privacy technologies, then we can keep this narrative alive that privacy is for criminals. And it's not true. It's a human right. I just do it purely out of principle. I want to be private. I think it's safer, from a cybersecurity perspective as well as from a physical perspective.
And something that I've always wondered myself is, what can we, the honest members of the privacy community, the people that want money to be private by default, that don't want to conduct any nefarious activities, what can we do to help keep the nefarious actors away? What can we do to make sure that we don't get stained on our name by people that want to conduct illegal activities?
Oh, that's a good question. Part of me says, nothing really, because guess what? Criminals don't care about the law, and we have law against all crimes. Okay, so it's just part of the ecosystem at the end of the day. There's always going to be nefarious actors, bad actors. We can do a lot to reduce it. I think, especially in the decentralized space, should be ways to make sure that someone, for example, does not engage in money laundering based on the code without having to KYC that account. I think there should be, because the same way that these AML activities are flagged, you could still flag it. You're like, hey, this account is doing something, but you don't know who that is, and you would just stop it, and it's baked into the technology. And that's my vision for the future. That's how it should work, because people still get their privacy.
Right. If people that are listening to this also have any thoughts on this debate, because it's something that's been ongoing as long as there's been a privacy community, right? Leave us a comment, leave us your ideas. I'm checking them all out all the time. And I know it's a bit cliche to talk about the criminals and illegal activities when we're talking in the privacy community. And somehow those two things have been correlated forever, because it's just an innate discussion on this community. But I really hope we can enjoy talking about these other things, such as like building new models that don't require people to put their names to it, building these exciting things that get the whole community involved, creating open source software that everyone can access and everyone can create their own versions. And I would like to thank the guys for starting the Haveno initiative. To everyone that wants to contribute, feel free to do it, and we'll always be happy to have you here on the podcast. So
thank you so much.
Csilla, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun talking to you today.
Yeah, we should do this more often.
Definitely.
Can you join the Clubhouse call?
I'm going to be joining the next Clubhouse call. If anyone wants to chat to me as well, I'm going to be there.
And if anyone needs invites, just ask any of us, because we have plenty of them.
Actually, I might. I've never used Clubhouse before, so yeah, I might. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you Sunday then.
All right, see you on Sunday, and thank you very much to everyone listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.